In the formative years of folk art and minor art practice in India, started with a different purpose. It was meant for the ritualistic and customary performances uh, as a masked behavior of a society. So the practice was commonly known as a community practice, though the images had some decorative quality into it, but it was not made for a purely aesthetic purpose. Self expression was the secondary factor that worked uh, behind the mind of its creators for a very long time. Having said that, I must also mention that it's very recently that maybe 50 years uh, of a span that we may consider when this aesthetic and utility, these two things are separated, and the aesthetic purpose is taken out, and right now we are giving a serious thought about its aesthetic aspect. We are finding out the need, the new need of this particular art practice purely from its aesthetic qualities. It is true that the variant of stylistic aspects that are involved with this art practice gives us new direction. There are contemporary artists who are trained in a purely academic manner in the mainstream practice. They're also realizing the richness of this folk and minor art and their aesthetics, and they're picking up many of their virtues in their own artistic practices. So there lies its significance, and perhaps we have discussed and mentioned it quite a few times in our earlier lectures, and we need to say that repeatedly to emphasize on this point, because from this particular point onwards we are going to take a different perspective towards the aesthetic components of these artworks, and will also connect it with the regular visual culture that we are living with. And with that reference, we are going to assess the aesthetic virtues that can have some modern uh, qualities into it, and with that modernity and the contemporary means, it can go long and survive for more time with some paradigm shift. It can also face the new challenges of the new time. So let's look at it from a purely aesthetic perspective and try to understand the nature of the practice from the aesthetic perspective. So I'm going to show you a few images, and through the images we'll try to see how they are in today's time. So I'm showing you some very recent photographs as the documentation that I have done to make this topic more clear to you. Seen in the pictures are the temples of the place named Srikalahasti. This is near Chennai in the southern part of India. This is a place which is mostly very famous for its traditional artwork known as Kalamkari painting. The Kalamkari tradition here are the hand painted one. There is another variation of this Kalamkari which are meant as printing. They are the block printing done on textile surfaces, but that gets practiced in a different location named Machilipattanam. But this is Srikalahasti, where the practitioner use a different technique and they make a pen of their own and create images that acts as souvenir and the backdrops, and they're connected to the temple tradition. They're meant for the purpose of worship, and that way it got popularized many years back, and the practice is still on. So this is the temple, and as we can see that the motifs of the temples are also having lots of intricate details in it, but overall it has a structure, a shrine like temple top that unites the entire thing. So it's like a combination of symmetry and asymmetry throughout. It has some emphasis on symmetry, but the intricacy of the images inside are also quite distinctive. So overall it gives us a complicated structure. It's not very simple and easily readable design at all. So that's the temple top, a detail of that image, which is a very freshly painted, although the temple is almost 900 years old, as they say. It's not a authentic data, but nearly authentic. Seen here is a practitioner of the kalamkari technique, which is done on fabric, either cotton or silk. They also use crepe these days. So the person, the painter, is holding a pen in his hand, which is a handmade pen that holds a lot of vegetable dye at one time, and it flows from here. So the images are made with continuous line drawings. The documentation is done from a nearby place in an artist's workshop. The workshop is guided by a master artisan whose name is M. Nagaraja. And this person who is shown in the picture, he is one apprentice who is also quite a senior apprentice who is working under some guru or the master painter, and he has also expertised in the technique, and he is working as per the need of the customers. Here he is making a part of a sari which is partially block printed, that comes from a different place, and there's one empty space where he is using his own vegetable dyes and executing the image. And in the detail, in the inset, you can see how he is pressing the one part of the brush and the ink is flowing from there. He is dipping it into the vegetable dyed black ink, and we are going to discuss all this method and material in some later module, in some lectures in detail. Now let's see the stylistic variation that it gives us. So this is one cloth which is made as a backdrop, and what we see in the picture is a scene from Mahabharata. However, what we see in the picture is a very interesting space division which has a horizontal emphasis throughout to tell stories. So it's all about the narrative that is taking place there, and there are images which are telling us the story of the creators. They also make images for commercial purposes. Seen in the picture is a motif of a bird that is repeated in a cloth, and they're hand painted. They're not printed, but they're almost identical. This particular motifs are often sold separately and then embroidered in different artifacts, but these are purely hand painted images that are still in practice, and this is a documentation that is done very recently. Another one before filling up the colors. So what they do is they again make the line drawings and then they fill up certain areas with color. Often they leave it just like this. They do not fill up the areas with color. Uh, Here they have used certain other colors also, which is a light brown here. So when you go out of this workshop where people are working with some customers' need, they supplied to the government emporiums and they have a fixed market. They also knew how to make imageries, and it's like there are different households where they have workshops which are approved by the government of India, and also it's a cluster of artists who live there and they have been practicing for a very long time. This is right outside the household in the roadside areas where we also see that there's this customary ritual that is being practiced every day. So we see the floor decorations with rice powder that they do as part of their daily life every morning on the floor, no matter how wealthy the lifestyles are. But this is for sure that they make it. On the road, these are the common features there. This is one image that is clicked in a museum. As we discussed about the contextualization and decontextualization, this is perhaps another very interesting example of there, where in a museum the household space is artificially created and the ritual and the practice is preserved for public viewing. Another image clicked in the museum, Dakshin Chitra. So with these images we get a fair amount of idea about the clusters of folk art and minor art practices that is still alive and thriving. So it's there that we are not basically creating a cultural community who are living in isolation, but they're well blended in a community place. This is a small town where there's a temple and the tradition was connected to the temple. It's still on in a different form. They're catering to a different market. There are different stakeholders who are patronizing and helping to carry it further. But this is also for sure that it's not happening the way it used to happen when it had regular use. So we will see more photographs from the museum where some old specimens are also preserved, and we'll try to match that with the recent documentation that is done, and we'll see how the mixed culture is nurturing the tradition which are existing. And this is also true that in Kalamkari Srikalahasti we do not see much changes. There are quite a few variations that are there, and we are going to discuss that in detail in some other lecture, but the changes are very limited. But it's more like they're not creating changes, or they're not bringing new subject matters in their creation quite intentionally. They might be fearing for the market. At the same time, I'll share some experience from one of the interview that I conducted with M. Nagaraja. In his interview, he replied for one of my questions where I wanted to know that how happy he is with the kind of earning that he is able to manage with this his creations. He mentioned quite a few things to me that is quite a eye opener, and I feel I may also share that idea with you. That in his statement he said that he creates for the sake of it. but there are many students who are working under him. There are many people who work in the direction that is guided by him, and for them, uh, they only produce. So there are certain hierarchies where a person imagines and innovates, and the other people, they are skilled laborers, they're artisans, and these are the terms that are not very well clarified in the modern society. So often, these masterminds are known as artisans only because they are not trained in a academic style. They have their own rules and regulations, but we are ignorant of it in many instances. And for that, we feel that these people, they do it very intuitively, but this is for sure that it's a community practice, and like any other community practice, people in the community, they are well equipped with the skill that the traditional practice provides them with. But this is also true that not all of them can think innovatively or create new things every day. It's also true that to cope up with the market, sometimes their works lose its soul, its expression, because of the repetition, because of the repeated market demand. They need to reduce prices to sell it in the market. Otherwise, if there are too many unsold things lying in one place because of convenience of production, if you produce more than the demand, then they lie and they do not get sold off. So this is just a very different way of looking at it. But the master painter Nagaraja, for him, he said that he gets something out of it which is very precious, and he cannot tell me materially that how much satisfied he is with the kind of earning that he has. Uh, though his earning is secured, he has his award money, and it is also true that there are fixed market for him, but it doesn't really matter to him, and he creates for the sake of it. This is one technique that he has mastered uh, from his ancestors, and he feels that he lives for this practice, and it doesn't really matter to him whether Manjusha or any other government emporium is helping him or not. He is thankful that he is getting some support, but had there a case where nobody is helping him, he would have still continued with his creation. So that is very positive to know. Also, upon asking about the sustainability or the longevity, the life of this practice, he gave me a very interesting answer. For him, he says that it depends on your faith. If you feel something will survive, it will survive. If we say it won't survive, it won't survive. So the answers are simply like that, which is much beyond the rationality or the basic logic, but it has a deeper or greater understanding that keeps it going. So let's go back and see the place and try to understand the ethos, the values that are intrinsically connected to the practice to understand the subject better and effectively. These are the images from the older practices which I picked up from the museum just to understand whether the existing techniques, the aesthetics that is there in the prevalent practices in that particular zone is reflective on the other works or not. So what we see there is that in the paintings in some of those furniture based wooden works, they are narrative in their quality. It has a central deity which are taken from different religious cultures. Of course, we can make out that the image at the right hand side of the picture is a image from a Christianity based tradition, where the other one is he is from Hindu tradition. They have that religious identity very distinctively connected to it, but both the works are not very typical, and they have some uniqueness into it that made it very rare and worth preserving into a museum space. Some other works, here too we get to see two kalamkari pieces, and one has a typical Andhra influence, that is part of the because Srikalahasti is situated in Andhra Pradesh, though it's very close to the Tamil Nadu Andhra Pradesh border, but this is a tradition which belongs to Andhra Pradesh solely. But in the other picture, we see that there is a strong Western Indian influence in it, but it's done in the kalamkari manner in the picture. That is because this particular tradition was patronized by the Maharashtrian kings. And then, if we go back to the story, we'll understand the historical connections. But right now, we are purely concentrating on the aesthetics and trying to understand the aesthetic idioms that is that creates the dialogue between the identity, between the perspective, between the pleasure that we get out of this kind of a viewing experience. And it's all about the experience that enriches us from these creations. The next one is also another textile piece which is preserved in the museum. It's done in a applique technique, which is very close to the applique of Odisha, and these are the states which are very closely situated one after another. So if we go and see the map, we can figure out that Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, they had some connection. So there are possible exchanges that took place there, or these are something which can be hypothetically put here. There is no authentic documents that can tell us the exact reason why these people tried this kind of appliques on cloth and when they did it, under which circumstances. But these are for sure some of the backdrops from a temple where two birds are worshipping Shiva. We saw the same bird motifs, which is a peacock, in the textile that I showed in the previous slides. So the motif is very common. The technique is completely different, but it gives us the aesthetic quality of a typical kalamkari cloth, though the technique is different here. There are other images from another tradition which is following the same kind of figuration, only when we see the images here, they are made on a different surface. So the material is different. It's done on these are leather puppets done on leather with vegetable dyes again, and they are made for shadow puppetry tradition there. But when we look at it, we see that they're following the same stylistic orientation throughout. These are some old examples of Tanjore painting which took place in Tanjavur. And in Tanjore painting, what we see that, as we said in the beginning of the lecture, that they were known to be the jewel embedded artworks. So they used a lot of precious and semi-precious stones as well as gold and other precious metals in those paintings. They were patronized by the Maharashtrian rulers of those time who lived in the southern part of India. But what we see is the similar kind of a linear figuration and the quality where the space division is almost symmetrical and it's all filled up with human figures with some simplified and roundish voluminous at the same time flat and two-dimensional decorative qualities, and they are very intricate. They have variation in color, in style, in poses and postures, but there is a basic balance which is emphasized on the symmetry because of its space division. And also there are shrines, the temple tops, which are taken from the temple structures of that particular region. In the contemporary murals of Kerala, we see that the figurations are partially taken from the same style, but it also has a lot of foreign influences into it in terms of their figuration, their stylistic features, where we see that it looks more like the artworks from the Far East, namely Java, Borneo, Sumatra, Indonesia, and so on. So that's because they had a trade route, and their artwork came here. The textile technique of Java batik and kalamkari, they had some trade based connection, and kalamkari was a technique which is believed to be practiced from an Iranian origin. And we also saw this kind of a vegetable dyed cloth. There are evidences that in Indus Valley civilization they use the same technique. So we do not really know its origin, but here we are looking at the aesthetic aspects purely and with some involvement. So these are the details, and we can make out from its figuration that it has a typical way of execution with a lot of sophistication, and the techniques are purely fresco based, which are done directly on the weight plaster with vegetable colors, the oxide based powder colors with some binder. In this picture, we see a pure textile of Telia Rumal, that is a woven ikat. It has a complex method of weaving with lots of variation, and we also see in the murals which are framed, and there are reflections because of the glass frame that are there, but we can see the suggestion of this kind of textiles in their borders. So textile and figures and the textile techniques and drawings, they were a combined aesthetics that was there in the tradition. And then I'll show you another image which is very recent, and these are the kind of cloth that they're selling in the local stationery shops, where the temple visitors now are not into buying the real kalamkari because of this like for the ritualistic purposes. They need to buy things, but what we see here, there are handkerchiefs which are getting sold, and they have some block printed and often silk screen printed images that has the kalamkari aesthetics in it. So they are often taken to the temple to cover the offerings, and they're also used for many different purposes, and they're the shops which are very close to the temple. There are also shops close to the temples where we see that the aesthetic is completely changed. So they no longer adhere to the old kalamkari technique, but the images have certain qualities which are typical of that place. So to look at them from a purely aesthetic perspective, it gives us some new direction as like how where it stands in the prevailing visual culture. And for visual culture study, it's very important to see how these cultural practices are leaving and growing into a commonplace. Because this is also true that it's not our aim to create a cultural pocket which is confined, and there should be free flow of interaction of these artisans, the art practitioners, its connoisseurs, the patrons, and also the community at large. This is something that we can understand, that when a place is known for its traditional art, the dwellers of that particular place may choose some other profession, but they cannot be totally ignorant of the existence of that practice. So, by patronizing that practice, we contribute to the growth of a community where the aesthetic sensibilities are strong. So, this is for sure that the aesthetic sensibility of a place gets influenced by its artistic tradition and the vice versa.